The views expressed on our programs are not necessarily those of WVON, Midway Broadcasting Corporation, or our participating sponsors.
The following is paid programming. The views are not necessarily those of this station. We are the talk of Chicago, 1690 WVON.
WVON 1690, this is the talk of Chicago. It's Tuesday evening, and you know what time it is. Every Tuesday from 9 until midnight, we're on the air. StraightWords. Go to our website, StraightWords.com, and you can learn how to donate and keep the show going from week to week right here on WVON 1690, the talk of Chicago. Brother James G. Muhammad, Brother Naba'a Muhammad, Brother BJ, and we are here with our special guest this hour. It's going to be Eugene Puryear. But before we do that, let's take one call before we get into our interview. Where Art, you're on WVON, sir. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing fine, brothers. How are you? I just want to comment on something real quick, and I'm gonna speak. I'm talking about God, and I'm specifically talking about black people because I don't understand why we hold certain black people in these special places. Any black person that sold drugs, dope, cocaine, heroin to black people and destroy black people and black families and communities that has went into generations, God ain't with them. They're not no leaders for black people. I don't know why we say these things or accept these things when we put these people, Jeff Ford, whoever these people are, they sold dope to our community and put our community in the position that is in today, and generations of families have been destroyed or still suffering from the decisions of black men who sold drugs to our community. So God ain't with that. God ain't with men or women, whether they little boys or girls, who kill and murder other black men, women, and children and destroy families. He's not with that. So we need to be clear on what side we on. Either we on God's side or we on the devil's side. And it sounds like we want to be on both sides, and God is not on two sides. You either with God or you're against God. And anybody who deliberately destroys the black family to profit for themselves for whatever reason it is, they are not on God's side. I leave you with that, and I end with "and what now, black people."
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Art. You know, I wanted to say this. God is not on the side of evil. But the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that God came to save us from the sins of white people that we had adopted. And he said to us as a people, you got to be cleaned up internally and externally, and you have to live a righteous, moral life to be acceptable. But he also said, we are not responsible until we are taught the reality of who we are. None of us here are condoning the selling of drugs and the slaughter of our people. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad did an article that said, love self first. And he talked about our destruction of one another and why it needs to end. There's nobody more deaf on our killing, murder, slander of one another than the Nation of Islam. And no one better at changing our behavior. So Malcolm Little was what? A pimp, a drug dealer, and a petty criminal. He met the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and he became Malcolm X, a man quoted, emulated, and respected all over the world. So when we talk about Larry Hoover, Jeff Ford, what Brother Halim said was, he never condoned any of their criminality. Never. He said that he has visited black men in prisons all over this country, from maximum security to minimum security, and saw generations of us locked up, right?
Yes,
what he said was, these brothers are locked up not because of their criminality at this point in their lives.
Right.
They're locked up because the enemy knows they have great leadership ability and great leadership skill. And since these men had some kind of spiritual and intellectual and revolutionary awakening, they now become an enemy to the struggle. White folks sold us, bought us here from the beginning. Huh? White folks gave us the drugs. Huh? White folks gave us the weapons. So we don't condone any evil or criminality. And God, brothers and sisters, we should be very clear. If he came to save our people, what do you think he's going to do if we are involved in the destruction of the people he came to save? But that judgment is not mine and it's not yours. It's Almighty God, Allah's judgment. And you're seeing it every day. You're seeing it in how people are just losing their minds, losing their lives. Let me close with this, because I want to be clear. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said, nobody today gets away with anything. Huh? So a good part of what the drug dealers taught to be that by the white man have done, right? They destroyed not only the lives of others, they destroyed their own lives. They destroyed their own families. And so why won't these prison and jail institutions allow the Nation of Islam in to teach them?
Exactly.
Why do you oppose us? If you want to see reform, turn them over to us. Stop blocking us. Because you got people in prison, brothers and sisters, that have a harder time trying to do right in prison than when they were doing wrong. So we got an enemy. That enemy's forever working, and Allah is going to destroy him. And if we don't stop being little devils and emulating the enemy, Allah is going to destroy us. But understand this first. The reason why we are so strong with what we say, because we believe what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said. We believe what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan says. And we believe it is our duty to bring the truth to our people so that they can hear the truth and make a decision. Your brother Abdul Halim Muhammad, Southwest Regional Minister of the Nation of Islam, who was on earlier, you heard him talk about that. So that's what we're about. Trust me, some of us have lost loved ones to violence. Some of us have had families devastated by not just drug abuse, but alcohol abuse. The legal drug sold and taxed by the white man, who's now selling and taxing cannabis, getting you to pay that. So that's where we at with that. May Allah bless us all to fall into line with what he wants us to do. This is a redemptive work. Maybe if we spent more time trying to redeem one another instead of trying to find faith in our former slave masters, maybe we'd be a little further down the road. But that being said, we were awaiting the arrival of Brother Eugene Puryear.
He's on.
He will be speaking to us tonight. He's on?
Yes, sir.
Well, let me stop talking, man, and bring this man in, because we've been waiting for him. Eugene Puryear, Breakthrough News. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about what's happening in the black world. Brother Eugene, you there?
It is always happy to be with you, brothers.
Brother, thank you. Sorry for the hold up.
No worries at all. Clarity is paramount.
Man, so Brother Eugene, thank you again. Wanted to talk to you about news from the black world. A couple places I wanted to start, and they're related. I just read something earlier today, Brother Eugene, about some migrants from Haiti that sailed a little ship to Florida, and they were able to reach the shore by Allah's grace. We thank Allah that they were able to reach land. And we know that the Kenyan troops are now in Haiti as part of a quote-unquote peacekeeping force associated with the United Nations, but really run by the United States and these other groups that control Haiti. And there has been this massive unrest in Kenya. Mm-hmm. What is going on with all of this, man?
I mean, it's an amazing confluence of events to have the same day the first 400 Kenyan police officers are flying to Haiti, allegedly to bring, peace, joy, and happiness to everyone in Haiti. The police in Kenya, the same people, same force, shooting down peaceful protesters in their own capital, anywhere between 29 and 32 dead, over 300 wounded. There were some unbelievable pictures that were coming out of Kenya. This is last Tuesday of people's brains on the street, that had been blown out. Very evocative footage. Even CNN captured them arresting and beating up medics that were trying to help people. So it really said sort of everything you needed to know about the Kenyan police and everything about what you've been told in terms of their role in Haiti, that this is who they really are. But I think this is a significant event on both ends. But in Kenya, I think it's huge. And last Tuesday, there were 1 million people on the streets, and today, all over the country, there were large demonstrations, and the capital was totally shut down. Essentially, the basic bottom line to understand why they're protesting in Kenya is 80% of the people in Kenya are under 35, and 80% of the people who work in Kenya don't make enough money to survive and have to have some sort of other side hustle or rely on international aid or whatever it may be. And President Ruto, who was involved in sending these troops to these cops to Haiti, decided in that moment, when 80% of people can't make it, to raise taxes on that 80% of people on just about everything: diapers, food, menstrual products, cars, and importantly, internet data usage, because you have a lot of young people, and they're calling it the Generation Z protest there. I remember 80% under the age of 35. And a lot of people who are in this Gen Z zone are using the internet to make money on the side, to make ends meet. So they even tax that. So essentially taxing the poor, I guess just for the benefit of being poor, because it's also one of the most corrupt leaderships, which is also part of what's happening. Like for a skilled laborer, like a skilled worker, like a carpenter that you couldn't just get from anywhere, but you really had to hire to do some nice woodwork, they're making, maybe $8,000-9,000 a year. The average Kenyan legislator is making $78,000 a year, and I'm talking American dollars. But you can imagine it's much, much more in Kenyan shillings. But how far that could go, in a global South country. So anyway, I'll stop there. But that's basically what's happening in Kenya. Bottom line.
Brother Eugene, I really, in looking at this stuff happening in Kenya, it just, to me, as you said, a harbinger of what's to be expected in Haiti. If the Kenyan police are brutalizing their own people in their own country who speak the same language and who they should have some vested interest in protecting, if they're out here brutalizing people, firing live ammunition at people who are protesting in Kenya, now you're going to Haiti, where, brothers and sisters, just so you know, Kenyan troops don't speak English. They don't speak French or Creole, which are the languages in Haiti. They speak English. So how successful do you think they are going to be and trying to forge relationships. The other thing, Eugene, I remember the 80s when we had Haitians fleeing Haiti and dying, and their bodies washing ashore on the shores of Florida. And so it's really kind of scary for me to now be reading that at least some people are now attempting to make that trip from Haiti to the United States. And I think people need to understand nobody makes that kind of trip haphazardly, correct?
Not at all. Not at all. The chances of dying are high, being intercepted and deported, and you have to have an immense amount of desperation. But if there's no way to eat, get food, find stable housing, anything like that, and you're caught in the midst of a violent situation, I think a lot of people look at it as you might have a chance to die either way, but the chance is lower trying to migrate in some sort of dangerous way. And if not, coming in a small boat, trying to find a way to, crowd yourself into the cargo spot of a plane, which people do sometimes, getting another flight to go down in Panama and come through the Darien Gap, which is one of the most dangerous places in the world, north of Colombia in Panama, where, people die by the thousands trying to cross to get here. But it's the main way to get sort of smuggled into the United States. And then to make it all the way up through Mexico. So, and then to get to the border, and we remember when they were out there with those horses and those whips, who knows what's going to happen when you're going to get here. So ultimately, this is people fleeing for their lives, and it could, get worse. I think that's the question. Gary Coney, the prime minister, so-called prime minister, installed and really puppeted the United States. But ultimately, when he did his welcome ceremony for the Kenyan police, he said, we're going to go house to house, neighborhood by neighborhood, and reclaim things. There have been some small skirmishes between, some of the quote-unquote gangs and the police. There's one kind of well-known one where a police station was overrun, different things happening. So it's unclear how that's all going to shake out. But nonetheless, to your point, I think we'll see more desperate people trying to get somewhere.
Yeah, Eugene, it's the other thing, brothers and sisters, we want you to understand that what you see happening is in Haiti has been orchestrated, and we have to repeat this because we want you to pay attention. And you can research everything we say. Don't take my word for it. Don't take Eugene's word for it. Read it and look it up for yourself. So, Brother Eugene, we got Haiti, we got Kenya, and we got now there's some other Caribbean nations that are supposed to be bringing troops into Haiti as well. Where else should we be looking in the black world? Can we go to South Africa for a minute?
We can definitely go to South Africa. A lot happening in South Africa.
Yeah.
A lot happening in South Africa.
Yeah, because the president of South Africa, if you don't know, brothers and sisters, South Africa recently had elections, right? The ANC, African National Congress, which has dominated, I guess, politics for the last 30 years, maybe? Has it been 30 years? 30 years?
Yeah, 30 years, 1994.
Yeah, since they got independence, or since not independence, since the end of the official structure of apartheid, white minority rule. Okay? The ANC, African National Congress, has been the dominant political force. In this recent election, however, the ANC lost seats. So they didn't have enough to form a government by themselves. So they have now formed a government with the Democratic Alliance and another group. I'll have to look it up. But look, brothers and sisters, blacks are 90-something% of the population in South Africa, okay? Whites, from what I read, are about 7%, I guess. Then you got those who used to be classified as colors, and you have Indians. But what the ANC did, they have now formed a government with the Democratic Alliance which is a white-led party, which has been accused, and which I say has been interested in representing white interests, and this other party, and whites are only 7% of the population, but because of this now, this national government of national unity, well, not national unity, this government, this coalition government, if you want to call it that, they now, the Democratic Alliance, this white-led, white rights-protecting party, in my view, has now gotten seats in portfolios or ministries or high places in government. So they weren't able to find a government with the black groups. They formed one with the white groups. What is going on here, man? Brother, we headed for another white president of South Africa in the next 10 years?
Listen, I would say that's not impossible for sure. And I definitely think the outcome of the next 2 or 3 years will probably determine what happens. But yeah, I mean, what basically has happened in South Africa is the worst part of the bargain that was made to end apartheid, the bill has really come due there. And that was that the sort of the white money establishment would essentially stay in charge of the economy, even though a lot of the politics would be democratized, and that there would be limited concessions made by the ruling elite, of all exclusively white. There would be limited concessions made to blacks, but on the terms that they wanted to sort of make them, and the ANC would be sort of the interlocutor between those two interests, able to use its mass base to actually, get the South African people to agree to an agenda that was significantly less, certainly, than they were asking for in the struggle against apartheid, but even than you might expect in a bargain. So not to stay too long to that, that's why I think the most important thing in a way to think about this election is that it's not even really about the ANC, it's about the entire political system, because most people did not vote. It's like 40-some million people in South Africa can vote, and only 16 million people voted. So people say the ANC got 40%. Well, okay, in one sense, they got 40% of the people who voted, but they actually only got 15% of the people who are eligible to vote. So you can see in the other parties, it's even smaller, right? So at the end of the day, it's like 20% of the population voted for anyone. So it's really like kind of a massive no confidence vote in the whole system post 1994. Like this whole post-apartheid era is not working for us. And a lot of these people are young people, so similar to all over the continent and Kenya. So anyway, the DA now has been able to use this, and this is part of their agenda. The other party is the main party, the Inkatha Freedom Party, which is a Zulu party, which was also sort of introduced by apartheid, the apartheid government, to split the black community in a way, but it represents sort of a tribal politics, which in Africa I feel like is not necessarily good. And there's some other parties, including the Pan-Africanist Congress, which was the other liberation movement with the ANC, which has become much, much smaller. But that was, I think, surprising to people. But the bottom line is, the people of South Africa are rejecting the governance model that they have, but there's not a clear alternative on offer. So the most sort of, reactionary, apartheid, leftover, white dominant rule type individuals have been able to seize the political agenda.
So did the ANC not have any other options that they chose this, in my opinion, worst case scenario for them? It sounds like what you're saying is, the dissatisfaction is going to definitely taint the ANC even more negatively than it has in the past, because people are the way where it looks going to be looking at them as not really what they stood for initially. So what was the advantage for them? Was this the only option that they had, was to form this coalition with the Democratic Alliance, or were there other options that they could have taken that would have put them in another better place, which I would be curious of why they wouldn't have taken a better option?
That's a fantastic question. And they had many other options, and almost all of them better than this. but it says a lot about why the ANC hasn't delivered over this 30 years or why it ended up this way. But bottom line, they have 40% of the seats, right, essentially. So they just need to find 10, 11% more. So they could have allied, for instance, as was proposed to them last weekend, but they rejected it and went ahead with the DA. They could have allied with the Economic Freedom Fighters, the EFF, which is a split from the ANC, several years ago, but sort of largely recognized as a major part of the youth movement. Like most of the colleges, they won all the votes there. So they have a profile as being very radical as well, nationalizing mines and banks, many of the things the ANC used to say before apartheid fell. But that being said, they offered them a coalition on terms, but they said they wouldn't work with the DA. So that was out for the ANC. But that, in and of itself, with one other small party, which they could have gotten, they could have had the majority that they needed, and it wouldn't have really been an issue. There's other sort of combinations of parties. There's also a party called the MK Party that's led by Jacob Zuma, the former president of South Africa, who also left the ANC last year because of some internal issues. And they won the most seats in Zululand, where he's from. And they also had enough seats that, combined with someone like the EFF or other parties, they could have made it work. But ultimately, what it comes down to, the reason why they didn't do that, is the ANC itself is infiltrated by the imperialist and the ruling class. But the ruling class of South Africa is heavily linked with America and England. And, essentially, they had their own agents. And those individuals don't want to ally with, especially the EFF, to some degree also MK, but many of the other parties, because they're afraid that they will push them too far away from the agenda of keeping South Africa locked in an apartheid-style economic model, where the rich people are basically white except for some blacks now, and most black people are desperately poor, and the country is not, able to develop to its potential.
And that's quickly. What about this land? The whole land question now with with this new government. Is there any movement in land distribution for the indigenous population?
Yes. Yes and no, I guess, is the way to look at that. I mean, it's definitely still a big, big topic. I think when you sort of look at what has happened so far, very little land really has been redistributed in the whole context. The vast majority of the land still continues to be held in an apartheid-style way. The goal is to have, the government's goal, which is pretty low, was only to have about 30% nationalized or, redistributed by 2030. Right now, it's about 17% of the land has been redistributed to blacks. So it's still a massive issue in many different ways. I mean, it's important culturally, but I think it's also important for people to recognize it's important economically, because the entire way you created the mining-based economy in Southern Africa was to, we talk about taxes in Kenya, was to put a tax that could only be paid in Western currencies called a hut tax on individual people, so that instead of, say, growing corn to feed workers in mines and being able to develop their own economy, all blacks are forced into the city, into slums, to be a low-wage workforce or a permanent sort of unemployed, potential low-wage workforce. So to redistribute the land, and this is also starting to happen in Zimbabwe, by the way, where they have redistributed the land, allows you to have more balanced economic growth in the country and to draw people away from these mega slum cities that start to exist in places like Johannesburg, because people have no other option. So that's going to be a big question. I'll just close on this, because this is why it's important when we're talking about the DA. The Minister of Agriculture is the white man who is the head of the Democratic Alliance. So in this core issue of decolonization, they have, in fact, installed someone else. Now, they've split the department, and they've put the Pan-African Congress, PAC, you really can't assail their record. I'm not even sure why they're in this government. And they've given them the Land Reform and Rural Development Ministry. So how those formally combined tasks will be carried out, I don't know. But you can see they're trying to signal both ways. But to me, to have the Minister of Agriculture be the head of the DA, I guess if they were black, it wouldn't really matter. But the fact that it's a white person, I think, just really rams home the point about what's happening, I think is indicative of the types of directions this government is either going to go or become paralyzed because it can't really agree on which way to go, and then the country will just continue to fall further apart either way.
Yeah, Eugene, I was looking at something, and this is from the AP, which reported that the of course, South Africa has some of the world's highest rates of inequality and unemployment. And so they reported 32% unemployment across the board, right? And 45, this is official unemployment, brothers and sisters. 45% unemployment among young people ages 15 to 34. So naturally, when you have those conditions, you've got high crime. And the public service has been failing, and so the country is prone to rolling electricity blackouts, where they basically cut the power in certain areas, and then it moves on and on. Brother Eugene, I was in South Africa years ago. And the thing that struck me then, and I know it's even worse now, was there was a culture of struggle in terms of going against apartheid. And with that struggle, there was solidarity. What the ANC and Mr. Mandela, Nelson Mandela, after he came out of prison and became South Africa's first black president, they were forced to fall under the Western models of economics and the Western models of business and capitalism. So with that split, with those developments came a split. And now it became less about liberation and more about the almighty dollar. And so, you have tremendous wealth, definitely by white folks, because they didn't give that up. But you also have wealthy black folks. So to me, it's just distressing. But the enemy's always there, brothers and sisters. So now you come out of a system where they give you the quote unquote political power and they keep economic power.
Mm-hmm.
You never win with that. Let me just tell you. Because the economic power buys off your politicians. That's what happens. And the economic power, you see it right here in America. Mm-hmm. We just talked earlier about some 15 million, some say 23 to 25 million dumped into the campaign of the black congressman out of New York, Westchester County, and the Bronx, Jamal Bowman, dumped to stop him, to get him out of office, because he was a critic of Israel, called for a ceasefire, and was on the progressive end of the political spectrum. So, Brother Eugene, are there any other things that we need to kind of explore, or things you'd like to know about what's happening in South Africa? It's really sad to me. Really sad.
It is very sad. It's very sad. I mean, I guess the only, as you said, the culture of struggle that exists, and I think the only real hope is, will this kind of, do nothing seen at best, and certainly do wrong seen at worst in the government, will inspire people outside the government to move towards, as Nelson Mandela himself said shortly after he was elected, if we do not deliver for you, you should do to us what you did to the apartheid regime. And I think, that history is well documented, so we know what that means. And will that become operative? I mean, there's a lot more kind of loose talk in a way, in that kind of way in South Africa about how serious it is. I don't really know, but, it's of great consequence on multiple levels. You think about South Africa has great potential, and if it's governed well, I mean, it's $2.4 trillion worth of minerals in the ground, $125, $150 billion a year coming out of that sector. The stock exchange's market cap, $1 trillion. So South Africa, potentially is a major hub when you talk about the world, center of gravity shifting towards Asia and the relationship between Africa and Asia in particular, and that struggle that's waging against the U.S. and Europe. So how this turns out is of great consequence for Africa itself and other countries. I mean, I will note, we're talking about Haiti, the only country willing to send arms, or able to send arms really in the context of the geopolitics, but willing and able, let's say that, was Aristide was South Africa. And right now, and this is a major issue for the DA that they hate, South Africa provides a lot of assistance for Cuba. And, what will happen there. And it's interesting we mentioned the thing, to bring it full circle here, to the Haitian small boat issue and the family trying to get to the shores of the United States. If you come from Cuba, they have what's called wet foot, dry foot. So if you make it to America, you automatically have permanent status. Now, why is that? It's obviously because from the point of view of Haitians, they do not want Haitians in here. But from the point of view of Cubans, they want to do everything possible to try to weaken the government of Cuba, which right now is in this very dire straits there because they have made the sanctions and the blockade so significant that there's shortages in basically everything. People are doing, enormous feats to stay alive, but it's like something that could be resolved tomorrow. The United States could just snap their fingers in the blockade, and you would not have a rush of Cubans coming to America, so you would address the immigration issue, and people's lives would start to improve. So you can see how it's all sort of connected, in this thread, that they want to destabilize anywhere that could potentially be a threat. Cuba, Haiti, South Africa. I mean, Kenya they've captured, because in addition to Ruto sending the troops to Haiti, here's the payoff. He's now a major non-NATO ally of the United States, the top military alliance just below being a part of NATO, which, among other things, gives you privileged access to weapons that the United States will pay for, so that, you can bolster your regime at the expense of your neighbors, and as we see on the streets of Nairobi, your own people. And Kenya will be the next host for the biggest U.S. military games in Africa. So ultimately, their payoff for Haiti is they become a more favored node inside this broader imperial system that's designed to, basically keep Africans especially, but really anyone who's rebellious down.
Yeah, and brothers and sisters, look, I want to remind us, it was just 3 years ago, right, that these images came out of Haitians being grabbed and whipped and abused by U.S. Border Patrol agents in Texas, right, near the Rio Grande. This was just 3 years ago. So I want you to think about the policies of your government and your president, Joe Biden, continuing this policy of Cubans can come, but our brothers and sisters from Haiti can die. That's basically what the policy does. So when you think about this man, think long and hard. Think long and hard about what he is and isn't doing and what we want him to do. And don't let the fear of the white sheep drive you to support somebody and not get nothing in return. But I'm really, Brother Eugene, that period in the 80s when, like I said, the bodies of Haitians were washing up on American shores, brother, this is serious life and death business, brothers and sisters. It's no joke at all. Brother Eugene, do we have any callers? Anybody we need to get in?
Yes, sir. Sister Anita, she's been waiting for us.
Okay,
you're on
let's
WVON.
in.
All right, Sister Anita, go ahead. You're on WVON, StraightWords.
Oh, hi. Good evening. That would sound very, very scary had I not heard the words of Elijah Muhammad. He is bound and determined that each man can take care of a woman, and he said he going to take care of 1 trillion if it means keep that darn blue-eyed crazy person out of our lives, okay? Some men do love their women, and they do love everything about it and the responsibilities. It sounds like the white man, and there's another man that I ain't interested in the fake religions of the world, are getting an agreement about selling people dope religion, okay? And the white man obviously has allowed himself to follow that. And sounds like he needs another man to take care of him, which sounds like what a woman does because she actually has to have children. So I think what the problem is, there's homosexuality running this world, and it is not considering women and children. And for that, I say that because what is my role as a woman? I am to produce children so that they can have just men making money together, because if they have children, they can't make money, even though they need people to make money. But they're too stupid to understand because of their...
All right. Thank you.
Still there? Did we lose her?
We lost her.
Running the world, and I think that they're leaving out women and children and the development of them, which is what Elijah Muhammad was about. And this is why they make all these crazy decisions, because they're not considering nothing but if everybody was a man. They got women taking birth control young, which means the only time a woman can have a baby, not have a baby, is when she's old. So you got young women living as though they're old women, but they don't have the wisdom of the earth from having children and being with a man. So that's deforming the women. So they can just put anything over on people once they start thinking deformed, like everybody on the earth is a man, and there's no allowance for anything else. This is how they come up with these greedy schemes to just make money for themselves, and that's even warped. I wouldn't be as scared of it as it looks. It's just that they're defying God and the role of the man on the earth, and they can't be fair to other men, you know, because of that, because they're not going to allow the men that want women to have any wealth.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Anita, for your call. You know, Brother Eugene, it's interesting the comments that Anita made, because there was the UN Human Rights Council recently discussed this issue of women. And one of the things that they talked about was the need to eliminate laws and practices that contribute to economic violence against women and girls. So this meeting was June 28th. And one of the things that the UN Human Rights Chief said was that 1 out of 3 women, check this out, have been subjected to some form of violence, physical, sexual, psychological, or economic, at least once in their lives. So this certainly, the other thing that this Human Rights Council official said was that global efforts to deliver on gender equality have failed, and you've got about 3.9 billion women worldwide who have faced legal barriers affecting their economic participation, and women earn only 77 cents for every dollar paid to a man. So right now, women earning only 77 cents for every dollar paid to a man, and there are other inequalities. So I guess this thing of the status of women continues to be one of the things that, you know, continues to linger, and one of those fights that we just have to continue to fight, because this is rather disturbing as well.
No, I agree. I mean, I think, and, you know, we talk about Africa, I also talk about Haiti, but certainly about Africa. I mean, you know, the quote-unquote feminization of poverty. I mean, you see so much, the disproportionate effect. You know, you see it in Sudan in a major way, for sure, in the context of the conflict there. The disproportionate effect on women, the disproportionate sort of the effect that adds on top of that you just laid out in terms of economic inequality You mentioned a country like South Africa, where a huge issue in the election, was gender-based violence, which is, in sort of epidemic mode there in South Africa, and how exactly to address that. So you can see sort of up and down the line, this is a major challenge, and I think it just speaks to the fact that, especially you think about the African continent, there's so much conversation in the United States and the West about, these countries aren't democratic and the issue of the elections and all these other pieces, and how hollow the rhetoric of democracy, really is and really becomes when it's so narrowly focused on, did you have an election every 4 years, and did like the U.S. and EU journalists come and give you a thumbs up and say that you did it correctly, as opposed to how are you addressing these systematic inequalities that continue to exist, all across these systems. And that's basically what you boil it down, what's happening from South Africa to Kenya to Nigeria, which also, by the way, is, sort of on the cusp of perhaps its own social explosion around raising the minimum wage there, really is an issue of whether or not you're going to start to address more directly the sort of real underlying causes of why Nigeria is a rich country, but the majority of people are poor. And that's not, how many people they elect to the parliament or whatever, if it's a British-style system or American-style system or whatever. So expanding the boundaries of what democracy means to, like, actually meaning and being able to control the government and use it to improve your life, that, I think, is a lot of what we see in the Sahel and in a lot of these struggles that we see, especially in Kenya, where Ruto, just to go back to where we started, he ran on a platform of speaking to the people who are protesting him now. His whole thing, it was called the Hustler Movement, and his whole concept was, we're speaking to the hustlers, we're doing hustler economics, and recognizing since most people couldn't make ends meet, everybody's hustling, and trying to speak to that generation of young people to feel like, yes, they have the drive to work very hard to try to improve their lives, but they're not being given the tools. But now 2 years into his term, he hasn't delivered, and he's turning on them, while at the same time, he's becoming the neo-colonial face of the U.S. occupation of Haiti. So anyway, that's something certainly that was sparked by your comments there.
Well, Brother Eugene, we want to thank you as always for coming on. Anything else you want to mention before we let you go?
The only thing I will mention, which is sort of something that people may seem small, but I do want to say, people may have seen like a month ago in New Caledonia in the Pacific, the French colony, where people were protesting. Yeah. Well, now a lot of the leaders of those protests have been taken to France to be tried for the protests, saying that they were rioting and destroying things and all these other pieces. But this is like a South Pacific island chain just north of Australia that is like a literal French colony. They want to impose whites-only rule, not whites-only rule, but close enough to it, by letting people who've moved from France, white people, vote and get who've moved there in the past 10 years and get the majority of the votes over the indigenous population. And independence parties who want independence for New Caledonia have basically the majority inside of the parliament. So it's a story that's kind of fallen on the news, but I think when we talk about what's happening in Mali, in Niger, in Burkina Faso, in Haiti to some degree, like this is in the exact same vein with New Caledonia, people who were directly colonized by France, trying to rise up. And I think they're kind of connected, in terms of this sort of latter-day revolt of French neo-colonies and actual colonies. So I just wanted to mention that before we went, because, it's something I think people
I think that's kind of important, Eugene, because we're talking about the indigenous people of these islands, brothers and sisters. And there was some unrest because of what Eugene talked about, France still ruling, controlling, meddling in the affairs of people that want to be independent. And now there was some unrest. They basically declared martial law. And then they came in and took many of the leaders, brothers and sisters, and didn't try them in New Caledonia. They took them thousands of miles away to France.
Mm-hmm.
Thousands of miles away in terms of trying them. Look, brothers and sisters, you better keep on listening to Straight Words. So you can see what's happening in the world, and in the black world in particular. Brother Eugene, how can people get what you got, and how can they continue to follow you and support you?
I appreciate that. You can find me personally. I only have one social media. That's Twitter. I'm at Eugene Puryear, Puryear. Breakthrough News, my outlet. We're on all social media at BT Newsroom. But if you want to make it easy, you go to breakthroughnews.org or youtube.com/breakthrough news. And that's how, you can keep up with us, figure out how to donate, do different pieces. And I hope everyone who's listening to this is going to donate to Straight Words, too, because we got to support our community media in times like this. So I appreciate y'all, brothers, as always, man.
All right, you, Brother Eugene. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Peace.
Peace. All right, man.
Yes, sir. Good stuff. Good
well,
stuff,
brothers. Man, I tell you, man, brothers and sisters,
We need to get some money in here.
We do need to get some money in here. We absolutely. Brother BJ, talk to some people about getting some money in here, man. Please.
I'd love to do that. I'd love to do that because y'all need to go to our website, StraightWords.com. StraightWords.com. This is a powerful website. You talk about independent black media. This is what we give to you on the radio and on the digital platform with our website and all our social media platforms, y'all. But brothers and sisters, if you enjoyed what you heard, you've been with us throughout the night, y'all know that this is black media. Y'all know that this is what we need in the hour that we are living in. So don't hesitate. Put your money where your mouth is. People, you spend money on what's important to you. So if this show is important to you, please go to our website. We got several, opportunities and portals for you to donate money and support us because we need your support. We need you to help us. That's the bottom line. That's the only way we stay on the air. So every week, people donate, and we thank y'all for helping us to keep the word going because we black, we strong, unapologetically pro-Farrakhan. Ain't no other radio show in America that's saying that boldly every week on the radio. So we thank y'all for supporting Brother Naba'a, Brother James G., and Brother B.J. Murphy. Y'all should support these prolific journalists. These brothers been writing in the Final Call newspaper and producing black media content, and they telling the truth. So they deserve your support. So please go to the website, StraightWords.com, StraightWords.com. And that's all I got.
All right. All right. Well, brothers and sisters, also, so we will, if you go there, you'll find out how you can use Zelle, PayPal, and Cash App. But you can also text me, 312-480-9775, 312-480-9775. Text me, and I will respond directly to your individual text and show you how you can help us do what we do. But we do this, brothers and sisters. Hope you really enjoyed tonight's discussion. I think we had some great ones. But we are pay-for-play radio. We're not public access. We got to pay or we don't play on the air. And we don't play at all when it comes to what we're doing. So we are trying to deliver to you information and defend, preserve, and protect your interests in the interests of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam. I'm Brother Naba'a Muhammad, and you've been listening to Brother James G. Muhammad and Brother B.J. Murphy, Radio Hall of Fame broadcaster. Straight Words, we are done for the evening. So go to StraightWords.com and support black media, and do me a favor. Love your black self, okay?
Go ahead. Alaikum salam.